How's it going, guys? So in today's video we're going to be restoring another iPhone 2G. This one had a kind of unique problem. The home button and speaker and dock assembly had been torn in a disassembly. I think what had happened was someone in the past had tried to replace the front glass, the screen, and in the process had torn part of the ribbon cable that connects the home button. Anyways, kind of rendering it useless. Anyways, so I was able to source a new ribbon cable for the dock connector from eBay, as well as a new screen. And so in today's video we're going to go ahead and put that back together. So that's why you see me kind of pulling this apart right now. I'm sorry that it's kind of really hard to show you, but right here I'm desoldering the microphone assembly that goes onto the new piece. There's just two pins that had a desolder and then resolder onto the new ribbon cable, and then it's a similar process for the home button itself and the speaker. Maybe in the future I can put together a video that explains that more precisely, more in depth. I noticed that there really wasn't a whole lot of tutorials or things online or on YouTube that shows how to do it. So hopefully this is a bit of a starting place. As you see me, you can get an idea for what it's going to take to replace a home button on an iPhone 2G. Excuse my poor soldering iron skills, but definitely a beginner, but still trying to learn. Anyways, but it seemed to be working fairly well. So now you see me taking the original frame and getting it ready for the new dock, speaker, microphone, and home button assembly. I had to take off some of the old adhesive and then kind of feed the ribbon cable through the slot. Once you slide it through, then there's a location for each of the little components on that cable to sit. There's a little slot for the microphone, and you'll see in a minute that the speaker assembly actually kind of flips over on itself before it sticks down. Yeah, there it is right there. It kind of flips underneath. And then the home button itself, you can see that there's some adhesive on there too. You wait to put that on until you put the top cover, plastic cover, you'll see in a minute, on as well. But again, everything kind of just slides into its original position. There's cutouts for each of these components that makes it easy to reassemble once you have that ribbon piece all ready to go. So right there, the microphone has a little boot that it sits in and then slides down into the frame itself. So there's that top plastic piece that I was talking about. You can see the old home button ribbon cable that was torn. So I had to pull that off. And then that thing snaps into the lower section once the adhesive is removed. And then the new home button piece flips over the top of it and lays down just like the old one was. So now we're to the point where we can start prepping this new screen. I'll have a link down in the description for where I get these screens. I get them from eBay, from China, and they do take a couple weeks to arrive, but so far the screens that I've purchased from here have all worked properly. They are missing the earpiece grill, and so I've had to transfer that. But besides that, then I haven't had any other issues. And you have to make sure to put the home button piece in before you reassemble it. I've made that mistake in the past. The other thing that you need is to remove the old adhesive and then put new adhesive strips onto the frame, just so it sticks down properly and doesn't want to kind of push away from the frame. So I don't use any special adhesive or anything that's pre-cut. I just take some 3M double-sided tape, put it on, and then cut it to the right size. I cut out the edges, and then on the inside, then there's little cutouts that you need to make sure and remove the adhesive from as well. And same thing on the bottom too. To help keep the home button ribbon cable, I just cut a small piece of adhesive and put it underneath so it would stay in position while I put the screen and plastic home button on top of it. So now that we have that in the right place, we can feed the little display controllers through the frame, making sure not to snag any of the ribbon cables between the glass and the frame. That's really easy to pinch some of those cables and actually ruin them that way. But once you get them worked in most of the way, then you can slide it upwards, and that will kind of put it right in the correct position. And then I just had to push the LCD into the inner frame and then make sure that the display to line up with the frame. Now once I had that set, then I just verified that the home button still was clicking properly and everything was in the right place. Once we have that ready to go, then I put the little black tape where the SIM tray goes, and then it was time to put in this logic board. So I believe that this is a 4 GB model, which is really great. I like those just because those are truly the first iteration of the design from the first round of manufacturing, I guess, the Apple put out, and these ones are good candidates to be downgraded to iOS 1 in the near future, and so they're more harder to come by, I've noticed, and so whenever I can find a 4 GB model, I make sure to snag that. So I flip the battery over, which allows for me to work my fingers underneath the logic board and make sure that each of the cables are clicked in, and then sometimes I also use a spudger underneath to kind of put pressure on and to make sure that it's clicked in for sure. Make sure not to damage the antenna cables. Those are pretty fragile from my experience. Make sure that once you're putting the logic board in, that you kind of move those out of the way to make sure that you don't smash them. So right here I realized that I had forgotten one, and so one of the cables from the display, and so I had to kind of lift it back up and then tuck the ribbon cables back through. Okay, once we had that ready to go, then I connected the outer case, which houses the top power button. I put this on temporarily to turn it on and make sure that everything was working properly on the display. I had to plug it in and get it charging a little bit before it showed signs of life, but sure enough, everything seemed to be working fine. It had the old owner's kind of information on there a little bit. Okay, so once we have that verified, I'll go ahead and just turn it back off so we can wrap up the remaining kind of components that we need to install. So just like my last iPhone 2G project, there were a lot of just miscellaneous screws that I received, and so kind of using a bit of a process of elimination, I was able to identify which screw went where and make sure, and sometimes, you know, one of the screws wouldn't quite go in all the way, and so I had to kind of move it to a different position and see which one went where. And also, if you have like 4 or whatever, however many screws of the same type, that also helps you to figure out, like, okay, so the rim, the little bezel around the rim of the screen has this many screws, and I have this many that are alike, and so they go there, this sort of thing. And again, by the process of elimination, I was able to figure out which one goes where. So careful when you do this part right now not to chip your glass. The bezel is like a steel, I believe, and so it's very easy to chip the glass if you're not careful and if you don't have the screen properly aligned. But in this case, everything was in the right spot, so we were good to go. So now I just put in all the screws on that bezel. Then you can plug in the camera. Getting close to the home stretch now. I wanted to add a bit of adhesive here to make sure that the battery didn't flop around, but also I forgot to take off the adhesive backing from the new ribbon cable. So now was a good time because I knew that it was in the right position. I was able to pull that off and then just kind of lay it down in its natural position. So in an upcoming video, I'm going to be replacing one of the batteries on an iPhone 2G. I ordered a few of those, again from China, and I can walk through exactly how to do that. So now we're kind of on our last couple steps. Gonna go ahead and put the back case on again, and then power it on one more time just to verify that everything is still working. And sure enough, we see a low battery icon, and so I went ahead and snapped in the bezel. And so you really got to use some good gentle force right here as you try to snap on this back piece. I just kind of moved around each of the edges till it sat flush with the metal bezel. Here's an original AT&T SIM card, full size. You don't really see those much nowadays, but these are good to keep around because in order to activate the phone, once I restore it, you'll need an AT&T SIM card. Even if it's not activated, as long as it's an AT&T SIM card, then it should activate just fine. So once I have that done, then I'll go ahead and put the black trim piece. Now this honestly seems like one of the hardest parts to try and get that to fit right. It's really tricky sometimes to get the little plastic tabs to fit in their grooves and then to snap it in and make it sit flush correctly on the back. But once we have that in, then we can go ahead and pull off the screen protector, and now we're done. So after charging it a little bit, I turned it back on and was able to verify all of the functionality that worked properly. The vibrator switch, the rocker buttons, and then the touch display works properly as well. I also tested out the camera just to make sure that that was working, because sometimes you get a bad one, and I really should have tested that out before I put it all back together in case I needed to replace that. But in this case, everything was working properly. So here we can see got an iPhone 2G, original iPhone. It says 3.3 gigabytes or a 4 gigabyte model. And once I restore it, then I'll go ahead and be downgrading this to iOS 1 just to kind of restore it to its original glory as the original Apple iPhone. For now, I'm going to go ahead and just return the screen protector back on, just so I can protect it from any unnecessary scratches and chips and anything. I know it doesn't look great, but yeah, right now I don't have any actual screen protectors. So I hope you enjoyed this video. This was again a iPhone 2G restoration, and we'll see you next time.